musical, linguistic objects.
Greetings from Cyberdelic Space. This is Lorenzo, and I'm your host here in the Psychedelic Salon. And once again, I want to start out by thanking those kind souls who either bought a copy of one of my books or who made a direct donation to the salon. Your support is greatly appreciated, and hopefully I've already sent you a thank you note by email. However, I still haven't gotten those 2 snail mail thank yous out yet. I promised a week or so ago, but that should happen this week. However, I just want all of you to know how much I appreciate your support. Well, here we are, back together again in the salon, and already last weekend's workshop at the Salon Institute seems like a dream, but a very pleasant dream, of course. It was a really interesting weekend, and I'm still seeing all the faces of the people who were there and the new friendships I made, the old ones that we reestablished. It was really great. And in the weeks ahead, I'll be podcasting several hours of the conversations from that event for all of us here in the salon. And we'll eventually get the video of it posted online as well, and I'll keep you informed about that. But in case you haven't already seen the posting on my Facebook page, I came home with over 150 cassette tape recordings of workshops that Terence McKenna led at Salon over the years. And while I'm sure that some of them we have already heard here in the salon, from what I can tell just by reading the labels on the tapes, we've probably got over 100 new Terence McKenna talks to listen to here in the salon over the next couple of years. So if you are a big fan of his, I think that you and I are going to have a lot of fun in the months ahead. And what this means is that I'm no longer concerned about keeping the salon going with new and interesting material for a few more years. Now, for today, I want to pick up where we left off with the good Dr. Timothy Leary holding forth in a very small group setting somewhere in Germany. And as near as I can tell, this somewhat private salon was held sometime in 1983, which is the date you might want to keep in mind as you listen, because some of the things he refers to will seem pretty old-fashioned now, I think. Anyhow, what I'm about to play is the second tape in this series, and I haven't cut anything out. This is just where it picked up after the last one stopped, the one that I played last week. So let's pick up where we left off in my previous podcast and hear what was on Timothy Leary's mind, about 30 years ago.
You can't change because you cannot recreate the force of the didn't use imprint, but the original event of childhood and Oedipus and mother and father and so forth. Well, through our experiments with LSD, in our early experiments, we found something that was very powerful and very frightening and very good. We found that during powerful drug experiences or any powerful life experience, like when a mother gives birth to a baby. Oh yes, right. When a mother gives birth to a baby, there's a reprogramming of her brain, or a re-imprint. It has to be, because here's a 20-year-old girl, and she gets married, right? And she goes on a honeymoon, having a wonderful time, and suddenly she's pregnant, and then suddenly there's a baby. To keep the thing going, she has to be totally involved in that baby. That's a reprogramming of her reality. It's a reprogramming of her brain, and new circuits come out, the mothering. So that that period of giving birth to a baby is a powerful chemical experience. When the mother looks at the baby, and the baby begins to suck, all these circuits go out in the brain, and that's the most powerful brain change drug there is, giving birth to a baby. However, if the mother is not there, in some cases the baby is taken away from the mother, the baby does not make that first imprint, and it's called childhood schizophrenia or autism, or if the mother many terrible things have happened. The mother is maybe very in pain or frightened, and the baby's born, and the first time she looks at the baby, and she thinks the baby's going to be like the baby food ad, you know, like that. My mommy! Jesus, what a twisted, like that. The first imprint is not that way. And there's a very psychiatric situation. It's called postpartum depression. Yeah, and that imprint is not made, and it's very complicated. So the wonderful thing about the imprint and the way the brain is made by DNA is that people imprint all these different Chinese and German and Danish. Whoever speaks German, I'm saying Danish, unless they were born in it, right? Because Danish is very hard. I mean, Danes are. The guy says it's true. This opening up of the brain and the program is put in of German or Chinese or of the fat woman with the red bloomers or of the baby or whatever. And we discovered during our LSD experiences that re-imprinting was taking place, and that there are hundreds and hundreds of cases in our early LSD experience where someone was very, very open, and they'd go to the refrigerator, and they'd open the door of the refrigerator, and there's all that plastic food. Hundreds of thousands of people became vegetarians on the spot. I'm sure all of you have heard expressions like that. That's imprinting or reprogramming. Now what that led us to discover is, and this is one of the most wonderful, optimistic discoveries that I've ever heard about. It is possible to reimprint the human brain. Or, if your brain is a biocomputer, it's possible to reprogram the brain. Now, there are all sorts of laws about reprogramming or reimprinting. I read an imprint lasts about 1 week, unless it's reinforced. So if you, let's say, you imprint something very new, 4, 5, 6 days to kind of fade away. If you reimprint something that's familiar, then it tends to reinforce. Now, this reimprinting can be very dangerous. There are many cases, particularly early in our research, when a husband and wife would take LSD together, and the wife would come up to the husband and smile. And the husband would see a shark. So, for several days, when you try to make love, and after 5 or 6 days, 7 days, usually about 1 week, goes back. However, if the wife is like a shark, then maybe they get divorced. So the process of re-imprinting or reprogramming, and we all, you weren't here yesterday when I talked about John Lilly. The concept of the brain as biocomputer, we owe to John Lilly, was a natural thing, but he was the first one that wrote the book on metaprogramming and metaprogramming the human brain. I think it's one of the great classic books in psychology. And we're just at the beginning of a new science of reprogramming or re-imprinting your own brain. And it is true that if you want to do it, if you learn how to do it, it's possible to reprogram your brain. And now, if you have a microcomputer, an Apple, you can go get the software and get the floppy disks, and you pay $50 and get a disk for bookkeeping or get a disk for Space Armada, like that. You can make up your mind, really, and reprogram your brain if you want to. Now, I want to mention now, and then we'll have a break in 2 minutes, but I want to mention one more idea. A very important area of science now is demographics, or population genetics, population studies. And there are two aspects to this. Where you live is one of the most important things about you, because geography is destiny, and the ecological niche you inhabit really determines what species, what level of intelligence you live at. And also the year you were born, your generation you belong to. It's terrible, but the generation you belong to in a Western society, not in the old societies, because there are no generations, just went on and on and on, the same thing. But since World War II, in the Western societies, the generation you belong to is almost a different species. Like yesterday, I took a walk down into the village, and I saw the people that were over the age of 50 walking along, and they looked just the way they looked 40 years ago. They had umbrellas, and they had raincoats, and you know what German man and woman at 50 look like, middle class, walking along like this. And then I look at the German kids, see, and we're dealing with two different species. So, those born after 1946 in America, I'm not sure it's true here, 1946, after Hiroshima, television, multiple reality, those born after 1946, they think very differently. And that's the generation which is the body intelligence generation that I've been talking about. But those born after 1965 are a different species. You know, when 100 years ago, every boy, he was born to take care of a horse very quickly. Then when, in the 1920s and 30s, the mechanical age, like every boy had was born with a wrench in his hand. And his father saying, you know, what are you going to do with those pliers? Pull a horse's teeth? No. And then, kids today in Germany and in America are born with that computer thing, and that is a new level of intelligence and a new species. But it is possible. I can never be able to do computers as well as someone born after 1965. On the other hand, I understand that, so I don't feel left out, and I can at least try a little bit. Now, this is the first time, probably in human history, that little children can do things, complicated things, better than their grown-ups. That violates all the rules. In I told this story in Hamburg. You know the Rubik's Cube? The Rubik's Cube was invented in Hungary, right? A Rubik. But became very popular in America. The biggest selling book in America last year, 8 million copies of the book. Much bigger than any was How to Do the Rubik's Cube. 8 million copies. That's the biggest of any book, bigger than the Bible, anything. In Hungary, the Commissar of Education, the government got very angry, upset, and said, we've got to stop the Rubik's Cube. Oh, the Soviet Union said, the Rubik's Cube is another example of degenerate, decadent capitalism to take the young people's minds off the working class in the revolution. In Hungary, the girls said, this is terrible, because the kids can do it better than the teachers. It's impossible. The children cannot do anything better than the teachers. And it's true. I have some friends, sons of the children of my friends. Yeah, these kids come in and do the Rubik's That's a wonderful time in history to be alive when young people are doing things better than grown-ups. because that's the key sign that evolution is happening, because evolution only happens with young people. So that now we have these three generations, the after 65, and then the 46 to 64, and then we have evolution is happening. As we look at history, it's obvious that at each new stage of evolution, there's great anxiety in the social system, and that is happening today throughout the world. There's great fear because changes are happening so quickly. The fear of drugs, for example. But even before that, the first time that machines came, there was that fear. The first time automobiles came, the farmer said, the cows won't give milk and the chickens won't lay eggs, and if a human being goes faster than 20 miles an hour, it'll be bad and we'll go crazy. Every new technology that expands our mobility and changes the way we think and live, there's always this superstitious fear. And there is a fear right now, of course, a great fear of drugs, and there's even a great fear of computers. And particularly among people from the 60s and 70s generation, there's a fear of technology, and feeling many people in the 60s and 70s wanted to go back to an earlier way of life, and that's good. The wonderful thing about today, there's so many different experiments that you can make with your life and your lifestyle. And the idea that hundreds of thousands of European and American young people have gone to India, hitchhiked around the Middle East and studied yoga. I don't think that the next stage of evolution is going to come from everybody going to India and becoming wearing an orange robe. I think it's wonderful these are stages, and the intelligent person who wants to experience and relive different stages. When we were first taking LSD, for example, one period, we spent 3 or 4 months living in teepees. And teepees are a very aesthetic place to live, and it goes up, your eyes go up, and you have furs, and you have fire. You see the moon, and at night, on that side of the teepee, you can see the forms reflected. It's a very aesthetic, and also you get used, you activate, reactivate earlier primitive aspects of your brain. As we did that first night with an unga bunga and went around dancing with the candles. That's good, because we have these circuits of the brain, and I think the intelligent person in the future will try to reactivate almost every day or every week. As I said, it's very good to float and suck, for an hour a day or an hour a week, but you don't want to do it all the time. The taboos about computers and about video games are extremely interesting. In America, I told you about the Rubik's Cube, but in America, in many conservative cities and villages, they passed laws against children playing video games. The other day in Hamburg, I was being interviewed by a 24-year-old, very sophisticated young German writer who was violently opposed to video games. He said, it's terrible. These young kids go to these places and they put their marks in. They just, like drugs, they get this watch, they're in their own mind. And he was saying the same things that his father was saying about marijuana 15 years ago. And the changes in generations are happening so quickly that there's a movie. See, the thing about video games are very interesting. This is part of this brain-computer intelligence. The concept in video games is hands-on. And kids now, 5, 6, 7 years old, are learning to, they have one button that goes this way and they fire, and then this is for hyperspace, and this is for select, and this is for, or in a lot of these little games, like they have one, I've talked about it many times, it's called Las Vegas Gambling, and you put that in the little Atari home video thing. And then the 6-year-old child, first thing is enter, and then how much money do you want? So put 5,000 marks, and then what game do you want to play? Blackjack, 7 cards there, 5 cards there, 5-card draw, and the 6-year-old child says blackjack, and there's a little man in the video thing, and he's got a little mustache, and his eyes go, and they go click, click, cards come, and then it says bet, and then the child bets 50 marks, and then hit or stand, you know, for blackjack. And the game is programmed to be the best Las Vegas croupier, gambler. There's a 6-year-old kid who is actually matching wits, not with a machine. It's not, you're talking through the machine to other people. So the computer is really, now, the first generation of computers, it was a computer hack. You just go there and he didn't care about food, he just give me a Coke, and he had bad complexion, and he didn't wash, and he didn't go out with girls, he was just there because he's trying to talk to the machine. But now the second generation, oh yes, the universities in America, Patrick, you must not use computers for frivolous playing. Now the second generation, so the kids are coming along, they're not playing with the computer. They're using the computer to match wits with the most intelligent programmers, I said near San Francisco. So the computer now is like a telephone. But the concept of hands-on means that you, the child or the human being, is no longer a passive victim. Now we have it all victimized by movies and by television. You go to a movie theater, you pay your money, you sit there, popcorn, and you're there, and they're doing things to you. And they are controlling, they're programming, they really are programming the brain. The reason you and I smoke cigarettes is because we saw Gary Cooper putting it out, and then you got the, you know, roses like that, and or video TV, you know, you sit and you drink beer and you watch TV, you're passive. But the video games, the concept of hands-on is, now the first video game was Pong. It was just boom, 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 boom. That was like 1976. First time I saw it, why do people do that? And then the second generation, third generation. And within 2 years, they will have video games in which it will be as complicated as Goethe's Faust, or Shakespeare, or Star Wars. Right now, they have Star Wars. You can be Darth Vader, you can be Han Solo, you can be only, you know, Juan Kenobi, or you play these. So these children are learning how to be active. They're not going to be passive because they're going to get bored. Because they get very bored with video games. That means that the people that make them have to make them better and better and more complicated. And then when they get the idea of putting in a disc, putting in a game, learning it, pulling it out, playing something, the one thing you could do before with the television was change the dial. That's wonderful. And the little baby that changed dial was seeing more, multiple reality, was seeing more than the great Sultans had in the past. But with video games, it's much more active, and it is a higher level of intelligence. Now, it is always possible. There's always the danger that the commissars, or the chancellors, or the presidents, or the heads of merchandising and marketing of the big corporations or the military will try to program it, to program our brains. But, as I said, I don't know if I just said that today. Yes, I think I said that today. IBM and the KGB and the CIA, they're programming and they're getting instructions. They don't have the freedom. Throughout human history, evolution has always depended upon the one single intelligent individual who had enough courage and confidence to be able to stand up to the system and say, no. Or intelligent enough to say, no! or to say, oh, yes, 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 yes. In other words, an intelligent single person has all the options to, your time, go there and jawohl, you can do that, or Solzhenitsyn said, one writer can bring down an empire, and the history of human evolution is a history of intelligent individuals, women and men, who have carried this tradition. It's the oldest tradition of the mystery schools, the Gnostic schools, the Sufi schools, the Yogi schools, the Illuminati, the Templars. Throughout human history, there have always been those who have said that the purpose of human life is to find the intelligence within and not the external reward. So the same thing is going to be true with computers and video games. But I feel that it is necessary, if you want to continue to evolve, to get to learn and be comfortable with computers. You don't have to become, an expert yogi in computers, but you should know enough about how computers are programmed, because, like it or not, your brain's going to be programmed by someone who's programming computers. And you must know enough about it to be able to, at least be able to get the programs that you want. There's a movie that just came out in America called Tron. Have you heard about it? Tron? This movie, see, video games are now at the stage that the motion pictures are at when they had zoetropes and you put in a mark and, they flash the little pictures like this. They haven't even started using computer video games. The first movie that did this is a movie by Walt Disney called Tron. And it's about a man. It's about a man and a woman and another man. They're all programmers of video games. And this one man has made a video game that's very, very popular. But the computer company, and actually the computer cheated him out of his royalties, so he's very angry. And he wants to break into the computer to get proof that it was his game. And as he learns more about the computer, he's blocking him off from access to certain parts of the computer. And then his two friends, the woman and the man, are also getting to know too much about the computer, so that they are blocked off from their own games. And then suddenly they're told, well, the system's down, you can't work on the computer today. But inside the computer, the people they're inside the computer, the people in the game, and they are put in a prison by these, with electronic, it's electronic prison, because that's exactly what preventing access to a circuit is, inside the computer. Anyway, this man breaks through, and he's going to be able to get into the computer. So the computer, there are these researchers where they use laser beams and they can take an apple and they can, like that. The computer pulls him into the video game land. So he's in there and he's alive in there. He's running around. But everyone else is in there are the creations of his own mind, or the creations of his two friends outside. It's getting complicated, but and I didn't even understand. It took me about a day to figure it out. Actually, my 7-year-old son had to explain it to me. But the point is that it's not really the video game that they're talking about. It's the brain. that the figures in our brains are created by our own programming or by somebody else that's programmed our game. And our brain is like a series of enormous video games in which there's Chancellor, Schmidt, and there's Mick Jagger, and they're all running around inside the video games in our head. So the concept the next kind of movie will be show people, and they will go into their brains and see the visualization of the computer video panoramas is the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, because it's made just the way the brain is made, and it's very much like those who have taken very, very heavy doses of a psychedelic drug, where everything is made of light, and everything is made of lattice work, and you see everything is glowing with that energy. That's what the movies is like. So that, but that's the beginning. This is the first beginning. It's a whole new kind of movie making, which is going to change our consciousness and raise our intelligence just as much as color movies and television did over black and white, and sound did over talkies over the silent movies and so forth. Now, next I'd like to talk about, I've talked about body intelligence, and the key to body intelligence was that you become an artist of your own life, and I made the point that it takes a lot of work to do that. And then we've been talking about brain-computer intelligence, in which you learn to use your brain the way you would program a computer, which gives you a chance to reprogram or re-imprint, and to now I'm going to be talking next about genetic intelligence, which is a tremendous step ahead. I'm going to give you practical examples of how genetic intelligence is operating right now. But before I do that, let's stop and see if there are any questions or any comments. Anyone want to say anything? Is it clear what I'm saying?
I was asking. You said the reprogramming of our own biocomputer, the first steps to learn it is get in practice with a technical computer, right?
With a what?
With a technic computer,
Yeah.
video games and so on.
Well, I didn't say that was the first. I said I think that, yes,
You could learn a lot.
if you really want to enjoy the next 20 years, you've got to learn something about computer, really. Or you're going to be, a lot of the fun is going to be happening around you. You might as well enjoy it.
Okay, but there might be much more techniques you talked about yesterday that you want to tell us today. How to reprogram? Is that reprogram
What's
our
that mean?
video computer? And without, okay, video games is one possibility, but yesterday you told us you want to talk about more possibilities how to reprogram our biocomputer.
Yeah.
I think what I will do for the next year is to go every day to a hall where I can play video games, and then I will write you how I have changed my personality in this year, and I do it every day.
Well, no, I don't want you to go every day.
I will change.
Yeah.
Because I'm having new impressions, and what you said with the light and everything.
Actually,
a lot of new things.
What we did, we bought a game like Atari, and for the first 2 weeks, we played it a lot. We played it a lot for the first 2 weeks, yeah. Then after you get to know it, then it gets kind of boring, so I don't want you to go every day for 8 hours. Go as long until you get it. You get it, yeah, and then when you get it, then I always go in a video parlor, an arcade, in America, because I want to see, and I'll spend and I'll sit there and I'll watch, and here's a 7-year-old kid with patterns and sequences and pattern changes, and at least I want to see what's involved in the game, but I don't want to spend a lot of time there. But I always go into a video parlor at least once a week just to see what the new games are, I don't know if I told you this, for many of you are new anyway, so I'll tell it again, even if you heard it before. The great mystery of Western civilization is Pac-Man. Pac-Man. Pac-Man has made over $1 billion, maybe close to $2 billion. They have a song called, an hit parade called Pac-Man Fever. You know, do they have it in Germany?
No.
On the top song about going down to the arcade with the baseboard in my pocket, Pac-Man Fever. All the children, 7, 8, 9, and 10, sing this song. Do you know what Pac-Man is? You ever seen it? No. Pac-Man is a field of all these little white dots, and there's a little round thing with a mouth, and it goes and it eats all those dots, and it's being chased by 3 others, and then you have to go out, and there's a big energizer circles, and you hit one of them, then the police who are chasing you turn blue, and you can eat them. But it only lasts for about 15 seconds, and then they turn, now the little white dots about is the pills. And they're not eating the pills. At the end of the game is eat all the pills before you get arrested 3 times by the narcotics officer. I had to figure out why this game was so popular. Also, in Los Angeles, there's the big paper, the LA Times, which is very establishment, and they had an article one Sunday by a psychiatrist who says that Pac-Man has to do with oral, infantile gratification of sucking and all that, you know. Yeah, right. And there's another paper, which is more alternate, and that had instructions as how to play Pac-Man. and so 7, 8-year-old kids, my neighborhood, they're coming out of that paper, they're all reading how to play Pac-Man. No, I don't want to make a big deal of it, but I just tune in so I feel it's part of being in the 20th century now to know. See, people, they immediately, anything that's new, they don't like. So they think some more must be terrible, it's bad, or I think the intelligent person wants to know what it is. Well, why do they like Pac-Man, or why do they like these games? Because so any other?
But do you think that daydreaming is a very good way to get into contact with your brain possibilities?
Visualization and.
Yes, daydreaming, as we call it.
Sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you can get some help to get in the state of daydreaming.
Well, daydreaming. Sounds too fast. Maybe planned, directed visualization.
Yeah.
Because daydreaming is that I think it's possible to. There are many schools now which they train people how to visualize,
induce daydreaming,
and use their imagination in a very precise way. And they're even curing cancer. There are many schools in the United States. They probably have it here too, where they visualize cancer in ways of the body can fight against it.
Because talking about LSD, which state of the ecstatic time, which is the best time for reprinting or what you say, that the brain could be reinformed, or what was the word? Reprinted. What state of the ecstatic movement, aesthetic curve during LSD session? What is the optimal time for it? Is it at the beginning or at the end?
So that's a very interesting question. It's a question about during an LSD experience, everything is moving very fast and in many different directions. And if your consciousness gets caught, or if you focus your consciousness on anything that happens, it kind of stops it. And then all the manuals and the devices don't get caught. Keep going, because you might look in your wife's face, and you look in her eye, and suddenly her eye getting bigger and bigger until she's nothing except the whole world is her big eyes. You know, well, that's not the girl you married, right? That's nothing you have to. All right, close your eyes and like that. But then some people get frightened and
Does it matter to take wives off during?
Or there may be people, early experienced people, who start thinking about their heart. Many doctors, this would happen to a minute, and they say, "My heart is stopping." Thump. And then you wait a million years. Thump, oh my God. And then you wait. So, call the doctor right away. And then we say, well, of course your heart's stopping. It stops most of the time. And it starts. That's what our heart's supposed to do. Your heart's not supposed to go all the time. We're dying. Okay, we'll die. So, in a bad trip is when the imprint takes place soon. And then, like one time, we're having an LSD experience with a very nervous young man from New York, and he's worried. It's coming in 10 seconds. And I take LSD myself. No shit, what? The bomb, it's dropping. I said, no, okay. No. Hey. Oh, no. Boom. But in general, the imprint takes place towards the end of the, and is very powerful. For example, the last 3 times my wife and I took LSD, cost several $1,000s. Because the first time, my wife looked around the house and said, "We cannot live in this house anymore." That was at 3 in the morning. At 9, she was out there still hallucinating in the car, in real estate, and by noon, she was still hallucinating that we had a new house, and it cost $5,000. And then we took LSD in the new house, and we were out in the garden, and she looked around and she said, "Well, we've got to get a garden to come and plant all these differently." And then the time when my dog had the fleas, that was another one. It cost us $500 to get the dog food. But things like, if you want to give up smoking, for example, then if you smoke during an LSD session, that's definitely going to increase your imprint. If you want to give up smoking, the easy place to do it is during the LSD session, have no cigarettes around, and then try to not smoke and do it that way. Same thing is true of...
You think you could get the imprint, but you won't smoke after the session?
Yeah. Yes, it will make it 100 times easier for you to give up smoking. Yeah. And music, for example. Any music that you listen to during an LSD experience. Well, number one, you read a lot into it, sometimes more than there. Like, there are millions of people that thought the Beatles were playing just for them, you know. All you need is love, you know. John, you know, poor John Lennon got a phone call from millions of people saying, "John, thanks to me." But, because it is true that it's your brain and it is for you. John did write it for you. John doesn't know that. So that imprint of music is... But usually the imprints occur towards the last after 3 or 4 or 5 hours of an LSD experience. And it's extremely important after an LSD experience that the next day be protected from any kind of pressure or tension, so that you should not get involved in freeway traffic in a smoggy city the next day, because you're so sensitive. Although you can program yourself so you can do anything. You can go right through the freeway traffic and drive 80 miles an hour with your eyes closed if you want to. In general, it's better to plan the hours of the day after an LSD experience so that you're surrounded by the environment that you want to make part of your reality, because you literally are creating your reality. Well, I'd like to go on to the genetic. I started saying today, I didn't have enough time to finish, that science in the last, every branch of science in the last 10 or 15 years has there's been a breakthrough, a very interesting breakthrough. But the breakthrough is giving more power and responsibility to the human being. For example, the second law of thermodynamics, I have always thought was wrong. The second law of thermodynamics is entropy. And it says that the world is just quietly getting into zero temperature, and that all systems become, differential systems collapse into pretty soon everything's the same. It's the clockwork theory of the universe that all the clocks are going to run down, and pretty soon the whole universe is going to be... now that's a Protestant capitalist ethic thing of, God is a banker, and you're going to spend all your money sooner or later. There's a man called Ilya Prigogine. Do you know about Prigogine? Does anyone know about him? Anyone know the Nobel Prize in 68 or 69? And he has demonstrated both mathematically and experimentally that yes, it is true that all systems collapse. That's obvious. Even Mount Everest is going to eventually, collapse. But as systems collapse, it's called theory of dissipative chaos or dissipative structure. Energy is released, which allows a reformation at a higher level, so that evolution is possible. Evolution always involves a dissipation and a convulsive changing, and then a restructuring at a higher level. And the higher the level of complexity, the more fragile it is. So basically, evolution and intelligence can prevent entropy from happening, and intelligence is anti-entropy. And so that was the great death promise of physics and thermodynamics. We have repealed the law of gravity. We have reached escape velocity. In order to leave the planet, it has taken us 4.5 billion years. It's a gravity atmosphere swamp, 8,000 miles high. In order to get out of this swamp, we're literally chained to the planet Earth by gravity. And it has taken an incredible amount of intelligence on the part of large numbers of people to get the escape velocity, so that we've sent the first human beings off the planet. And every 10 years now, there'll be an increase of 100-fold. More and more people are going to be leaving the planet. That seems so obvious. I know there are some people that don't believe that human beings are going to continue to leave the planet, but there are many scientists in America and in Europe who have written convincing books that see, the tradition of evolution, as we said yesterday, is from the unicellular to the shoreline, 4 foot, 2 foot, the wheel, rockets, higher and faster with more intelligence, because the higher and faster you go, the more intelligent you have to be for forms of communication. So it seems inevitable to most of us that we're going to be leaving the planet. So we repeal the law of gravity. and we no longer have to think of ourselves as slugs crawling around on somebody else's planet. Planets are terrible places. They're terrible places. They're traps. They're swamps. Planets are like planets are like Wienerball restaurants or when you stop on the highway and you go off and you get food and fuel and gas and you want to go off. But the basic, most human beings in the future are not going to live just pulling themselves along, fighting. 70% of my energy goes in moving gravity. That's simply a waste. So we've revealed the law of gravity. And I talked about the helplessness of personality and intelligence. We talked about that yesterday too. Now I realize that you can increase your intelligence, you can expand your intelligence, you can re-imprint your reality. You don't have to be stuck with any point of view. There's no reason why anyone should live a life or inhabit a reality that is not of your voluntary choice. But the real breakthroughs in present time are coming in the field of genetics. And we have deciphered the DNA code, Watson and Crick and Marshall. The woman never got any credit for it. By the way, those two men grabbed all the credit. So we are understanding how evolution works. We understand that one single cell is you. Evolved in your mother's womb over 9 months to become a little infant, and then it was all pre-programmed that you would have this kind of hair, and also now there are new aspects. Genetics is exploding in all different directions. First, they thought that only blue eyes were inherited, and then or color and all that. But now they've realized in the last 10 or 15 years, called behavioral genetics and sociobiology, that behavior is inherited. How? Because you not only got your mother's beautiful blue eyes from her side of the family, but you also inherited the kind of brain models that have been going on, so that you inherit different types of brains. So when you walk down the street of your city, you meet 100 people, there are probably 100 different brain models, and there's some Maseratis, and there's some tanks, and there's some Volkswagens, some garbage trucks, and because to keep a large species like ours going, the division of labor, it simply does require many different kinds of nervous systems, and it's a good thing. Now, the very term genetics in America is so politically hot that Edward Wilson, who was the man who first developed sociobiology, was attacked by some angry left-wing women at a conference because he said that most women are biologically different from men, and that was considered to be chauvinist. Because of World War II and because of Nazi emphasis on genetics, liberals and socialists have gone the other way and said there's no difference. All human beings are born equal, and it's simply because of class and education. And if everyone is educated the same way, everyone will come out to be the same. Well, you cannot run a beehive, or you cannot run a termite colony, or you cannot run an advanced, complicated human civilization if everyone is the same. You simply have to have... Now, lions are all the same. Elephants are pretty much all the same, except for boys and girls. I don't know if there are any gay elephants, probably there are. That's okay with me. Do your thing. Obviously, this tremendous division of labor, this, by the way, is only temporary. Because as we live a long time, as we have understanding and control of DNA, it's possible actually to change. See, there have been sex changes. Isn't that wonderful? In the last 20 years we've seen sex changes. You don't like being a boy, you can have an operation to become a girl. It's amazing, isn't it? So that in the future, we will be able to make biological body changes.
You're listening to the Psychedelic Salon, where people are changing their lives one thought at a time.
And at that point, the second tape in this series came to an end, with the exception of a little conversation about taking a break. And there's still one more tape left in this series, and I'll try to get that out as soon as I can. Then my plan is to play either part of the recent Esalen workshop or another one of the Terence McKenna in Maui series, which is still waiting for me at the post office. I've got to get down there today and pick that up. But as I said in the beginning, we now also have, in addition, over 150 other McKenna recordings that are stacked up here in the salon. And so I might want to play the Maui recordings first and then the Esalen workshop to give us a little break from getting too much of the Bard McKenna all at one time. And also in the queue, there are several other recent talks that have either been given in recent months or that are going to be given in the weeks ahead by some of our fellow tribe members who are still on the lecture circuit. And I know that the McKenna fans, like me, can never get enough of the guy, but there are also some of our fellow saloners who think that I've already played too many of his talks, so I'll try to reach some kind of a balance to keep us all happy. But getting back to the talk that we just heard, first of all, I have to say that I found it somewhat synchronistic to hear Dr. Leary talking about the Pac-Man game, which was all the rage back when he gave this talk that we just heard. Because just a week ago, as I mentioned in the last podcast, I just finished reading Ernest Cline's wonderful novel, Ready Player One, in which that very game plays a role itself. And so I checked out the App Store and found a free Pac-Man app to download, only to discover that, well, I'm still not very good at it. But the main thing that I want to point out about the talk that we just listened to right now was Leary's comment about each generation since World War II actually being a different species. Now, back in 1983 or so, that was probably quite a radical statement. However, just this morning I listened to a TED Talk by Juan Enriquez that is titled, Will Our Kids Be a Different Species? And in it he points out the fact that at times the human race consisted of several different species, all coexisting here on our beautiful little planet at the same time. And there really isn't time right now for me to get into all that, but if you go to the program notes for this podcast, which you can get to via psychedelicsalon.us, you'll find that I embedded that TED Talk on the page, and you can listen to it for yourself. It's a very fascinating talk, and I think it would be more than worth your time to watch it. Well, I'm going to get out of here for now and get back to my massive digitizing project, but I'll get the next Timothy Leary talk out as soon as I can. So for now, this is Lorenzo signing off from Cyberdelic Space. Be well, my friends.